Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnanam Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Mukhaṁ karoti vachalam bhangum lankayate girim yatkripātamaham bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupakadami Dati Swapadantikam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhobhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna, Dandavats to all the devotees. And this will be our last discussion of Guru Tattva through the lens of the first three angas of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti presented in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So as those of us who participated before may remember, the first of the angas of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti presented in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is taking shelter of the lotus feet of the spiritual master, Sri Guru Padashraya. And we talked before about the importance of the spirit of the spiritual master in the sadhaka's life, and we'll see a little bit more of that in today's discussion, from perhaps a little bit different angle, although some of it will sound like, I guess, not repeating as much as underscoring how important the guru is in the life of the disciple. Okay, and then the next was accepting initiation and instruction from the spiritual master. And initiation is the process by which the guru gives the disciple transcendental knowledge, and that includes giving of the sacred mantras. So in our lineage, especially from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, we have two what we refer to as initiations: first initiation and second initiation. The first initiation is Harinam, giving of Harinam. The way our Guru Maharaj, Swami Tripurari, presents it is as the Guru's blessing the disciples' chanting of Harinam. The disciple doesn't begin chanting at that point, but at this point, I'd like to note that sometimes Srila Prabhupada wrote, on a couple of occasions, he wrote that first initiation is the more important initiation. He also wrote many times, including in a letter to me, that the second initiation was the real or more important initiation. And I'll talk about that for a moment. But the reason you might say the first initiation is the more important initiation is because that is when the Shishya and the Guru, the student and the teacher, make a commitment to each other. The Guru commits to the disciple, commits to serving the disciple by instructing him or her in the process, the abhideya, the process of sadhana bhakti, so that the student might attain the prayojana, the goal of sadhana bhakti, which is bhava, and ultimately that the disciples' bhava will grow fully mature into prema. So that's the Guru's commitment to the disciple. I'm here to help you. I have your back. I will instruct you. I will tell you whatever I think you need to know. I will tell you whatever you think you need to know, if it's actually something essential. And the disciple's commitment is to serving the spiritual master, which is today's anga. The disciple's commitment is to helping the guru in carrying out his or her mission in life, which is to spread the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, to spread the, as Srila Prabhupada puts it when he describes the 7 purposes for which he created the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, which was also very similar to the purposes he gave for creating the League of Devotees, whatever it was, 10, 12, 15 years earlier in Jhansi, in India. The techniques of spiritual life. And that's the Abhideya. The Prabhupada, the Guru's business is to share his or her bhakti with the disciples. That's exactly what they do. As we'll see, as we read, the disciple gets bhakti from the devotees. The Bhagavatam tells us, bhaktya sanjataya bhaktya, that we get bhakti from bhakti. Therefore, I think we discussed this last time, that bhakti is described early in the Bhagavatam as a haituki, causeless, which means it doesn't have any cause other than itself. So that's what we mean in the 11th canto when we hear bhaktya sanjataya bhaktya. Bhakti comes from bhakti. The sadhaka gets the practice of sadhana from the sadhu, from the guru, from his or her association with devotees. That's where we actually get bhakti. And we'll take a look at Bhaktivinoda Thakur discussing just that in his Harinam Chintamani. It's in the chapter on sadhu ninda, avoiding the importance of avoiding sadhu ninda, offending the Vaishnavas whose lives have been dedicated to imbibing and sharing the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. So we get bhakti from the bhaktas, and so sadhana bhakti comes from the bhaktas. I think I've mentioned this before as well. In his Madhurya Kadambini, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes how we get bhakti. And that is when bhakti when a devotee accepts bhakti, when a jiva accepts bhakti into her or his heart by the grace of another bhakta. So bhakti lives in that devotee's heart, and if that devotee is a little mature and has an inclination to share bhakti with others, Prabhupada liked to use the word preaching, then she follows that devotee's lead. Vishwanath begins the Madhurya Kadambini with a fairly elaborate argument for just how independent Krishna is, which is absolutely independent, completely. Can't be hindered by anything. And he does that to make one point, and that is that bhakti is every bit as independent as Krishna is. She can go wherever she likes. But here's how, and then he explains, but here's how she does it. She's taken shelter in the heart of the devotees who have accepted her, and if they're inclined to preach, if they're inclined to share their bhakti with others, as the Madhyama Bhaktas are, because they're able to discriminate among 4 different broad categories of entities. Ishvare, Tadadineshu, Balisha, and Dvisatsa. The Lord, his devotees, his own folks, Tadadineshu, his own. Balisheshu, those who don't have faith in bhakti, who haven't yet received bhakti but are innocent. In other words, they just haven't developed that faith yet, but they're not inimical. And those few, Dvishatsa, those few who are inimical, and they behave differently with those 4 different kinds of entities. For God, they have love. For the devotees, they have friendship. For the innocent, they have compassion, kindness, mercy. And for the atheists, for the those who are actually envious of the Lord, they have neglect. Prema, Maitri, Kripa, Upeksha. What they have for those folks is neglect. They don't have any time to wrangle with them. We don't have time for arguing with the likes of Daniel Dennett or whoever the new atheist of the day is. So, so for those who are innocent, the devotees are naturally compassionate. And so they want to share, they want to make a connection, a heart connection with the other jivas who haven't yet been able to receive the mercy of the Lord through what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur calls agents of Krishna's Kripa Shakti, those devotees who are inclined to teach or preach Sambandha Gyan, Abhideya Gyan, and Prayojana Gyan. So this is how it happens. It happens through the agency of the devotee. And the process that begins that is called Diksha, or initiation. So we have the first initiation, the imparting of the holy name, although all of us know that we were chanting the holy name before we accepted initiation from our spiritual masters. But the first initiation is the guru accepting the disciple and the disciple accepting the guru. There's this bond. I've sometimes compared it to marriage. We can date, we can cohabit, but there's something qualitatively different in most instances between living together or hanging out together and actually being married. Married implies oneness, right? It means it's a very intimate joining where the two become one, where you and I become we. Now there is that sense in any friendship, even a parental relationship, and even maybe a less committed romantic relationship. There is that sense. But when we're married, it's like we make this commitment. We're a unit. You're still you, I'm still me, but together we're we. It's, the romantic notion is us against the world, right? We can take on. There was this very romantic movie in the mid-60s, Swedish movie called Elvira Madigan. And it's about a young Swedish army officer who falls in love with this beautiful circus performer. And she runs away from the circus and he deserts the army, and they go off together simply to be together. And it was described as a beautiful movie. And indeed it was. It was beautiful in every way, including the heartbreaking tragedy of the way the story evolved and concluded. I don't want to say more in case anybody ever wants to watch this movie, but this is like it's probably in some ways kind of there with Romeo and Juliet as this great romantic, tragic story. So there's this, but when we marry though, there's this commitment, for better or worse, sickness and health, poverty and wealth, whatever it is, we're together. We're going to stick together and we're going to do this together. So it is with initiation, which I've referred to as one of the gravest decisions that someone can make in their life. This is a big decision to approach a guru and ask for initiation and then accept that initiation. And it's a big commitment for the guru, big decision for the guru to decide to accept the disciple, because that disciple becomes part of the guru's, in a sense, the guru's family. So it's a big thing, this initiation. And then the Diksha, the second initiation that we have coming from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, especially, is what is generally referred to as initiation or Diksha in the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, where that's the imparting of the sacred mantras that are used for meditation, and for worshiping the deity. And so Srila Prabhupada often, he wrote more often that the second initiation, this Diksha, is the real initiation, or the more important initiation. This is a very, the first initiation might be a kind of, maybe a little tentative in some sense, although we shouldn't see it like that. But it's a sort of a provisional initiation. And then when the guru and the disciple see that they both can live up to their ends of the deal, I guess. It's not a transactional thing, but still there is a sense in which, you know, I make a commitment to serve the guru, and the guru by assisting her or him in their mission, and the guru makes it a commitment to serving the disciple by helping them in their practice and guiding them in their service, and frankly, accepting their service. That's actually a great boon for the disciple, when the guru actually accepts even a small service from the disciple. It's a big thing. So taking shelter of the lotus feet of a spiritual master, and then accepting initiation and instruction from the spiritual master. Initiation is part of that step, but accepting instruction in Sambandha Gyan, understanding our relationship with the Lord. Abhideya Gyan, activating that relationship by our practice, by our sadhana, and then Prayojana Gyan as well. What is the goal? Why do we do all these different things, which might seem a little exotic to some people? So why do we do all these things? And that is to attain Prema Prayojana. Our Prayojana is Krishna Prema. So with that in mind, and then also we remember that these first three angas are, and I'm going to also wind up with that again today, but I just wanted to mention it before I move on to this third anga, that these first three angas, they're part of the first 20 angas, which Rupa Goswami characterizes as the entrance to the temple of bhakti. So that raises a question, at least in my mind, to what extent do we have access to the other angas of bhakti if we haven't taken shelter of the guru, if we haven't made that commitment to accepting initiation and instruction from the guru, and if we haven't given our life to serving the spiritual master. I don't remember, I think I might have mentioned this last week, but I do remember something that I wrote in my letter asking for initiation. And that there was actually one request. I asked Srila Prabhupada to accept me as his disciple and to engage me. I didn't ask him not to take me back home, back to Godhead, or I don't know what other devotees were asking. But I asked him to please accept me as his disciple, and to engage me in helping him in his service of spreading Lord Chaitanya's mission for the rest of my life. He has done that. He has kept me engaged progressively throughout my life, even through my long family life of over 40 years. So, and apparently progressively enough that I was drawn out of family life after my kids were, my daughters were grown and married. So, this is our life. So then the third step, the third of the angas, is Vishrampena Guru Seva. So I'm going to see if I can do some screen sharing here without embarrassing myself and my entire Guru Varga. So I think a good place to start would be with the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Oops, I clicked the wrong darn button. Okay. Share screen. Oh, not too bright. So here we see this third anga in the 99th text of the second chapter of the Eastern Ocean, of the second wave that we encounter in the Eastern Ocean of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the ocean of the nectar of devotional service, is Vishram Pena Guru Seva. So Rupa Goswami says, Vishram Pena Guru Seva Yata Tatraiva. So he's presented it earlier, and this is from the part of this chapter where he's actually discussing, he's presenting the pramana verses for these different angas of bhakti. So the list was earlier, and now this is in the discussion. So he says, serving the Guru with reverence from the 11th canto. And the verse 74 that refers to where it appears in the list of the 64 angas that's presented at the beginning of the chapter. And the verse is from Krishna's instructions to Uddhava in the 17th chapter of the 11th canto. So this is part of the Uddhava Gita. And Krishna says to Arjuna, Acharya mam vijaniyam navamanyeta karchit namartya buddhya suyeta sarvadeva mayo guru. One should know the Guru as myself. Him an ordinary man or woman, for he is the representative of all the demigods. Sarvadeva Maya. He is the essence of all the devatas. Maya means being all about, or being composed of, or being kind of essential. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments, he said, one should know that the Acharya belongs to me. So here he's paraphrases it. He says, one should know that the Acharya belongs to me. Acharya mam. So this mam apparently is possessive. The Acharya is mine. This agrees with such sayings as the revered, remember the revered Guru as the dearest of Mukunda. One should not disrespect the Guru by thinking him or her an ordinary human. So, and this reminds us of the 7th verse of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's Guruvashtaka, which Srila Prabhupada taught his disciples to sing every morning in the centers that he established for the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and which Swami Tripurari has discussed extensively, repeatedly, and so wonderfully. Sakshadhari tvena samasta shastraya ruptastata bhavyata eva shakti. But the spiritual master should be seen as good, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We might remember, if we've heard Srila Prabhupada's pastimes in the early days of his teaching in the West, when he first gave initiation, his Harinam initiation, to some of his disciples in 1966, they asked, well, what does that mean, initiation? He says, it means you should accept the Guru as being as good as God, which made some of them actually have to pause and think for a moment. What does that mean? And so they discussed it with him. So, Sakshadhari tvena samasta shastraya ruptastata bhavyata eva shakti. All the scriptures say, just as we see here, that the Guru should be respected as the same. Acharya mam, the Guru is identified with the Lord. But this Acharya mam, there's another implication there, because it's possessive. Kintu prabhorya priya eva tasya. And even more than that, the Guru is dear to Mukunda, dear to the Lord, very dear to the Lord, because the Guru is committed to the service of the Lord and to engaging others in the Lord's service as well. So this is certainly interesting. Now, we can take a look at this same, and this is a very short section. There's not a lot of discussion. There's not a commentary by Jiva Goswami, even like a 5 or 6 sentence commentary by Jiva Goswami. There's this very short commentary from Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur. So not a lot of discussion, from which I infer that this is something that was well understood and didn't need a lot of explanation. So then we can take a look at the same instruction as it appears in Srila Prabhupada's Nectar of Devotion. Serving the spiritual master with faith and confidence. Now that's really interesting in itself, because he adds, the diction that the language he chooses here adds dimensions. We see what we see in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is, at least in the translation, and that seems to be supported by the verse that's chosen to serve as evidence for this anga of bhakti, reverence. Sometimes Prabhupada says awe and reverence. And when he talks about Vishrampena Guru Seva, he quite consistently, not 100%, but quite consistently presents it in that way, that there's some distance between the guru and the disciple, which is an appropriate thing. At the same time, maybe not too much distance, or at least less distance as the relationship progresses. So faith and confidence, that very much brings in that Vishrambha, which we'll discuss at further length in a few minutes. So Srila Prabhupada says, well, it's interesting. I find it interesting that at the end of the previous discussion of the previous anga, accepting initiation and instructions from the Guru, Srila Prabhupada says, and we don't see this, in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, in the discussion of the previous anga, the second anga, in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Srila Prabhupada writes, so here he kind of creates a segue or transition to Vishrampena's Guru Seva. The attitude of the disciple should be to satisfy the bona fide spiritual master. Then it will be very easy for him to understand spiritual knowledge. This is confirmed in the Vedas, and Rupa Goswami will further explain that for a person who has unflinching faith in God and the spiritual master, everything becomes revealed very easily. So Srila Prabhupada says this is confirmed in the Vedas, and what he's paraphrasing here, what he's alluding to at least, but I think it's very clear that he's paraphrasing, or maybe even translating this verse from the Shveta Svatara Upanishad. Yasya deve para bhaktir yatha deve tata guru tasyaite katita hiyarta prakashante mahatma. Only unto those great souls, Mahatmas, who have unflinching and identical faith in the Guru and the Lord, are all the imports of the Vedic scriptures revealed. They show prakashante, means they reveal themselves. What is our endeavor? We talk about bhakti as having 2 parts, endeavor and grace. And what is our endeavor? Our endeavor is to attain that grace, just as we see in the Damodar Lila. Mother Yashoda tried and tried and tried so hard to bind Krishna so that he wouldn't go get into more mischief. And however many ropes she gathered, and there are a lot of ropes in her household because her husband is the king of cowherds, and rope is an important piece of equipment for cowherds. And her neighbors were all the wives of cowherds. So there are plenty of ropes there as well. So no matter how many times she tried to bind Krishna, she came up 2 fingers short. And those 2 fingers symbolize effort and grace. And finally, with all that effort, the flowers in her hair came out, her hair came down, she's perspiring. Then Krishna allowed her to bind him. not as much with the ropes as with her affection, her love, her preeti. So we see that. That's sort of a transition to this. And then we see serving the spiritual master with faith and confidence. And we see the same verse from the 11th canto. My dear Uddhava, the spiritual master must be accepted not only as my representative, but as my very self. You should never be considered on the same level with an ordinary human being. One should never be envious of the spiritual master as one may be envious of an ordinary man. The spiritual master should always be seen as the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And by serving the spiritual master, one is able to serve all the demigods. Now, it's a really nice way to translate this. By serving the guru, one is able to serve all the devatas. It's like watering the root, right? So it's really nice. But the verse itself focuses on that reverence, that distance. So it's in the heading that Srila Prabhupada captures the essence of Vishrampa, Vishrampena Guru Seva. And so I think I need to stop sharing this. Oh, no, I don't, because it's still in just another tab. So if we look at the Mona Williams Sanskrit English Dictionary, we look for Vishrampa, and what we see is slackening, loosening, or relaxation, or cessation, or trust and confidence in. This is more to our point, right? Trust or confidence in. And then we also see an absence of restraint, familiarity, intimacy, confidential. And then we see that it indicates confiding, confidential. So there's this huge emphasis on trust, confidence. And Prabhupada captures that in his heading to this section of chapter 7 of the Nectar of Devotion, serving the spiritual master with faith and confidence. Now, I wrote about this a few years ago in an article that was published on Harmonist and I believe elsewhere as well. So I'd like, if you will indulge me, I would like to share that article with you folks, and we can read through it together. I don't remember exactly when I wrote this. I don't remember if I wrote it after I accepted sannyas or whether it was before, but it's been published a few times on the Harmonist. So I called the article "Intimate Guru Seva: The Spiritual Catalyst." And a catalyst is something that changes the nature of something. It makes something happen, right? We generally see that. But I was also thinking of it in terms of my own kind of personal cultural life. So when I was younger, I spent as much time surfing with my friends as I could, because most of the surfing spots on the island of Oahu were coral reefs, and these were the days before surfboards had leashes. Our surfboards frequently had holes in the fiberglass surface that would let water in to the styrofoam core. Because I had a good eye and hands for the job, I regularly patched dings in my boards and those of my friends. Anyone who's worked with fiberglass knows that while the resin in fiberglass gives strength to the surfboard, the resin only hardens when we add a catalyst beforehand. So anyone who's done surfboard or boat repair, any kind of work with fiberglass, they know that they have to add this catalyst, this chemical, to the resin that will make it harden in a short time. It'll take it from a viscous, very, very sticky mess into something that's as hard as glass, especially with when it's over, has fiberglass, when it's coating fiberglass. So it's got these glass strands holding it together. And surfboards, the shell of a surfboard is quite strong, but it's also brittle. It can be brittle. So when it receives a hard or sharp blow from something, it can get a hole in it. Of all the elements, the catalyst is the essential constituent in the process, the component that makes the whole system effective. Spiritual practice also has a number of elements that work together to ensure its success. As with surfboard manufacture and repair, it has one essential constituent that serves as its catalyst: devotion to Sri Guru. Saints and scriptures have all characterized Guru Bhakti as absolutely essential to spiritual progress. Krishna Das Kaviraj says in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita that the spiritual master's instruction is the active principle in spiritual life. This is Srila Prabhupada's translation of Acharya Mata Jai Se Mata Sa. Sar means essence. And it's the instruction of the Guru that is the essence of our spiritual life. It's the active principle. This is the catalyst. The Bengali word Srila Prabhupada renders as active principle here is sar. Another way to understand this word is essence or essential principle. Consequently, surrendering to the Guru is itself the essence of spiritual life. As failing to do so means we completely miss the point of spiritual endeavor, rendering our attempts at progress useless. I mean, we can remember that the Guru is dear to Krishna. Prabhupada used to say, love me, love my dog. If you want to show your love for me, you also have to show your affection for my dog. Otherwise, how can I accept your love? Srila Jiva Goswami says in the Bhakti Sandarbha that satisfying the Guru is the main cause of attaining love, divine love and service. In support of this assertion, he cites the Agama Shastra. As an alchemist's touch turns copper into gold, so the spiritual master's touch makes his disciple transcendental, like Lord Vishnu himself. He further cites the Godhead as declaring, first one should worship his Guru, and afterward one should worship me. One who does this attains perfection. One who does not finds that all his efforts are in vain. Moreover, Sri Jiva cites Srimad Bhagavatam, where Sri Krishna himself says, I, the soul of all beings, cannot be satisfied as much by ritual worship, by generating progeny, by observing penances, or by self-control, as I am by faithful service rendered to one's spiritual master. It seems then that service to the spiritual master is what accounts for any success in our attempts at making spiritual progress. With these truths in mind, devotees in the temples founded by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada and his followers around the world begin each day with a meditation on the Guru by singing Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's Guru Vashtaka. In the eighth of his prayers, Chakravarti Thakur says, Yasya prasadad bhagavat prasado, yasya prasadan nagati kutopi. By the spiritual master's mercy, one may receive Krishna's blessings. Without the Guru's grace, no one can make any spiritual progress. So, from the beginning of Gaudiya Vaishnavism's spread in the West, Srila Prabhupada established the central position of the Guru in the lives of the sadhakas. But, as in surfboard repair, where we attain optimal results by adding just the right catalyst in just the right manner, we attain optimal results in cultivating Krishna Bhakti by developing a particular kind of service to the Guru. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu tells us that practical spiritual life is built on the foundation of taking shelter of the spiritual master, which includes several components. There, Srila Rupa Goswami explains those first components of sadhana. Guru Padashrayas Tasmat Krishna Dikshadi Shikshanam Vishram Bena Guru Seva. So we have all three of those first three angas. Guru Padashrayas Tasmat Krishna Dikshadi, right? Taking shelter of the Guru's feet, as well as taking initiation into the Krishna mantras and accepting instruction, dikshadi shikshana, diksha and shiksha, and Vishram Bena Guru Seva. A sadhaka takes shelter of the Guru, accepts initiation, takes instruction from and serves the Guru with faith, with trust. Sometimes we see the word Vishramba translated as respect or reverence, And a relationship with the guru rooted in reverence is undoubtedly helpful, especially in earlier stages of practice. So we talked about that a few minutes ago. And it's not at all inappropriate that when we talk about this anga of bhakti, that we talk about reverence, that we talk about respect, because the verse that's used as evidence for that supports that idea. But a quick exploration of that word reveals that the character of the relationship with the spiritual master should come to be quite different from the kind of distance implied in words such as respect and reverence. Srila Rupa Goswami himself defines Vishrambha later in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu in the context of discussing the mood of friendship, Sakya Rasa. He says that Vishrambha is a deep, familiar trust between two friends as equals, free from any sort of restriction or control. In his commentary on this verse, Srila Jiva Goswami further explains that this deep trust implies not only freedom from excessive reverence and fear, but also a sense that the friends are in no way different from each other. Elsewhere, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that it's a sense that one's own body, one's own life, body, mind, intelligence, clothes, and everything else are one with those of the object of love. This is how closely we should identify with the Guru. The subordination is always going to be there, but that, and Rupa Goswami uses deep familiar trust. This is a more intimate relationship than we see in reverence and respect. The reverence and respect are there, but this other stuff should be there. We should be able to, as we'll see, read the Guru's heart, anticipate what the Guru needs. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada talked about first, second, and third class servants. The first class servant is someone who knows what the master wants, what the master needs, and doesn't need to be asked. The second class servant is one who, when asked, provides what the master needs. And the third class servant is someone who can't get it together, even when the master explains what he or she needs and how to attain it. So one with those of the object of love. So Vishrambena Guru Seva points to a service based on a deep sense of identity with the Guru, to the extent that the disciple has no doubt whatsoever that the Guru has only his or her best interests in his heart. The disciple then has complete freedom to reciprocate, acting with no interest other than the Guru's interest. In this way, such mature affection for the Guru, which should never be mistaken for mundane sentiment. This is not friendship. Friendship actually means on a platform, equal platform. But there can grow a friendliness between the Guru and the disciple, and this is a desirable thing. We saw that especially in the very early days in San Francisco, especially, we'd see that Prabhupada would sometimes be very relaxed in his quarters with the disciples. He'd leaning against the wall, sitting on a cushion, leaning against the wall behind the trunk that he used as a desk, just in a dhoti and t-shirt or sweatshirt, and joking with the devotees. One of my god sisters who was there then describes it as just like a cowherd boy, she would say, just like a cowherd boy. But then when there was a program to do, and Srila Prabhupada would go in, he would wash his face, he would put on fresh tilak, he'd come out, and then he'd put on his uttariya, his top part to his dhoti, and as she would describe it, his acharya face, and he would get serious. And so this is not some mundane idea of friendship. The focus in turn forges a sense of mamata, which Srila Jiva Goswami defines as a complete identity with the beloved, such that the identity and feelings of one and their beloved are not separate. This mood appropriately describes the feeling the Vrajavasis have for Krishna. As Srila Prabhupada often defined Krishna consciousness as the realization that I am Krishna's and Krishna is mine. We may also define mature guru bhakti as the sense that I am the guru's and he, or more to the point, his or her desire is mine. So just how deeply does this identification run? How far does this intimacy extend? Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has said that a disciple who is deeply absorbed in the service of the guru may even ignore practices such as hearing and chanting, knowing that by guru seva alone, he can easily attain complete perfection and devotion. So sometimes the guru may ask the disciple to do something which might make it hard to do the kind of ordinary, the everyday duties of the disciple. Might make it hard to chant a certain number of rounds or engage in their deity seva puja in the way to which they might be accustomed. But by the guru's blessings, this doesn't have to be an impediment to the disciple's progress. More remarkably, he says, such a disciple completely absorbed in Guru Seva may even ignore the divine bliss arising out of hearing and chanting, and he or she does not even seek out the kind of secluded place suitable for bhajan. This assertion in no way minimizes the practices of sadhana bhakti. Our experience is, in fact, that the Guru teaches us to engage progressively in cultivating the practices. So the Guru's actual teaching, the Guru's actual instruction, the way the Guru actually engages us in is to emphasize those practices that grow our bhakti. But service to the Guru also does that. Rather, it strongly underscores, as Vishwanath says in his commentary, the supremacy of service to the Guru above all else. It is our affectionate service to the Guru that activates the other devotional practices and makes them pleasurable to Krishna, makes them enjoyable by Krishna, right? This sense of identity with the Guru, this kind of mamata, then gives the disciple at least a glimpse into the Guru's heart. This should yield a more mature, more intimate friendship with the Guru than the sort of official beginning relationship based solely on reverence, and perhaps a more dynamic understanding of Guru Tattva. This more mature connection will affect what means to bring about a deeper sense of surrender, which may express itself practically in a number of ways. We can find an illustrative example at the end of my Gurudev's pastimes with us. Although critically ill, Srila Prabhupada said that he wanted to visit Govardhan Hill by bullock cart. In those days, the roads around Braja were not paved as they are today, so the ride would have been very hard on Prabhupada, especially in his frail condition. His Ayurvedic physician advised against the trip, averring that it would have been tantamount to committing suicide. Two parties developed among the disciples caring for him at the time. One party thought that, as faithful disciples, we should accommodate Srila Prabhupada's desire, however painful it may seem to us. The other party argued, even to Srila Prabhupada himself, that they could not let him make the trip because of the danger. Now, rather than judging either party superficially, which may lead us to view those who objected to the trip as disrespectful of the spiritual master, an open-minded consideration may show, instead, that their position expressed a more intimate understanding, affectionately supporting his comfort and health, and thereby his commitment to spreading Krishna consciousness by presenting transcendental literature and teaching worldwide. Another instance where a disciple demonstrated a mature focus on Srila Prabhupada's heart or his essential desire was during one of his arrivals in the US. Devotees would customarily meet Srila Prabhupada at the airport and then gather at the local temple for a more formal reception. On one such occasion, Swami Tripurari, a brahmachari at the time, had spent the day at the airport distributing Srila Prabhupada's books. He changed from street clothes into his monk's robes in order to join the other devotees in greeting Srila Prabhupada as he arrived at the gate. However, because it was Friday, the busiest day at the airport, when the rest of the devotees in the community returned to the temple for Srila Prabhupada's formal reception, he elected to remain at the airport and continue his service. In the meantime, at the temple, Srila Prabhupada noticed his absence and asked about it. When informed that he had remained at the airport to distribute more books, Srila Prabhupada expressed his pleasure, praising his disciples' service attitude. We can see this identity with the Guru's heart perhaps most vividly in Srila Prabhupada's own service to his spiritual master. While Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur took seriously Mahaprabhu's desire that this movement be taken everywhere, and his son and disciple, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, took practical steps towards systematic propagation of Mahaprabhu's teachings beyond the Indian subcontinent, Srila Prabhupada brought this transcendental revolution to fruition, giving Mahaprabhu to all kinds of people around the world. In fact, although he worked with his godbrothers for decades, he ultimately found it necessary to work outside the formal framework of the institution of his own guru had created for this work. It was then that he was able to translate, publish, and distribute many authentic Vedic texts, establish temples on every continent except Antarctica, and train thousands of disciples to carry out his work. Reflecting on Prabhupada's mission, Srila B.R. Sridhar Maharaj concluded, one of his prominent godbrothers, concluded that Srila Prabhupada had been personally empowered by Lord Nityananda Prabhu to give Krishna consciousness to everyone. After reading the poems Srila Prabhupada had written aboard the Jaladuta and on his arrival at Boston Harbor, he reasoned that Srila Prabhupada had emptied himself of all desires except serving his spiritual master by working hard to spread Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message. Srila Sridhar Maharaj also required how Srila Saraswati Thakur had said that if he had another 10 years to live, he would have gone to New York City and preached from there. Our Srila Prabhupada, Srila Sridhar Maharaj opined, gave Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada those 10 years plus 2 more. His preaching was successful beyond what most could have imagined. The essence of devotional service for a disciple then seems to be dedication to the service of the spiritual master without any reservation, with complete confidence that such service will carry us to Krishna's lotus feet. This confidence finds support in Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's assurance that those of us who regularly chant his 8 beautiful verses of praise of the Guru during the Brahma Muhurta will certainly attain direct service to Vrindavanath Sri Krishna. Yastena Vrindavanath. So using just the right hardware in appropriate amounts yields the strongest shell for a surfboard, giving the surfer the greatest confidence in the board for riding even the most powerful waves. In a similar way, real devotion, confident, intimate, affectionate service to the spiritual master most effectively cures our spiritual practice. Matures, that cures in the sense of matures, not repairing or healing necessarily. Transforming our spiritual practice into pure devotional service. Such Vishrampena Guru Seva best equips the practitioner for confidently riding even the waves arising from deep within the ocean of the nectar of devotion. So Srila Rupa Goswami tells us in the 2nd chapter of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that out of the 64 angas, the first 20, 10 nishedha or instruction, 10 vidhi or instructions, rules, and 10 nishedha or restrictions, prohibitions, or don'ts, the 10 do's and 10 don'ts, that these constitute the entrance to the temple of bhakti. And then he says, out of these 20, the first 3, the 3 items having to do directly with the spiritual master are most essential. Without this connection with the spiritual master, without the connection with the bhakta, we don't really have access to bhakti. And then, I wanted to share one more thing. before we run out of time. Where's my screen? Share screen. Oh, it's in the Kindle, I think. I read this actually just this morning here at the Honolulu Temple. After the Mangalarti and Tulasi Puja, in many temples they recite the 10 offenses to the holy name. And it becomes kind of rote, a little mechanical sometimes. And I thought, a couple of years ago, I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if instead of just rattling through the 10 offenses, which we wouldn't be able to do if somebody asked us, let's say at 2:15 in the afternoon, what are the 10 offenses to the holy name? But somehow or other in that context, we can somehow or other get through those 10 offenses. If we actually read about them, read what Srila Thakur Haridas has to say about the 10 offenses to avoiding the 10 offenses to the holy name in Harinam Chintamani. So today we read in the chapter on Sadhu Ninda, Bhaktivinoda Thakur writing about the influence of the sadhu. This brings us back to all three of these things: the importance of the sadhu, the importance of the guru in the disciple's life. So this section is headed Spiritual Influence of the Sadhu. Krishna's spiritual energy of bhakti, composed of Hladini and Sambit Shaktis, resides in the pure Vaishnava devotee. For this reason, by contacting a Vaishnava, one can receive Krishna bhakti. And for this reason also, the food remnants, foot water, and foot dust of the pure Vaishnava are powerful means to nurture devotion. If one stays near a pure Vaishnava for some time, one can receive the bhakti energy flowing from his body. If one can bind that energy in one's heart after having developed strong faith, bhakti will develop and one's body will begin to tremble in ecstasy. Living in proximity to a Vaishnava, one will soon develop bhakti in one's heart. One will begin chanting the holy name, and then by the influence of the name, one will receive all the good qualities, which are the symptoms of a real Vaishnava. So we see from all the things that we've examined in our discussions of these three angas of sadhana bhakti, the importance of the guru in the disciple's life, the importance of serving the guru, committing to and serving the guru in our ability to progress in spiritual life. So I'll stop here since we're almost at the bottom of the hour and see if there's any further discussion, any questions or comments that devotees want to make. And I believe the setting is that you folks can unmute yourself if you want to. Krishna Kumari?
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Nice to see you, Maharaj. How are you?
Good to see you. I'm okay,
Good.
thank you. How about you?
I'm good too, thank you.
You look good.
Thank you. Just real quick, my background, I was initiated in ISKCON and 20 plus years ago. And so I've been listening to Sri Chaitanya Sangha devotees giving classes and that, and it's just been really wonderful. So I'm kind of harmonizing what my background from ISKCON and from the Sangha is. And so this is just a really wonderful class. Thank you so much. I've gotten so much out of it. And I think my question is that there are devotees that are really attracted to Krishna consciousness and have been, practicing for sometimes years. And they are really hesitant to make that next step to get initiated, to accept a guru. And for me, my thought is just when I have watched some of the initiations that Swami Tripurari has done, it's so different. They're not expected to recite the principles. It's like, okay, you're accepting Diksha and you're going to chant rounds, but it's not like, okay, you promised to chant 16 rounds. So the people that I talk to and that I know, it's like they don't feel like they can make that commitment to those 4 regulative principles. It's like it's too much of a step up, a goal to reach. And so then they feel like they're going to fail and not be able to live up to that commitment. And I feel like that's a real disservice that we're doing to these devotees, and that there needs to be more discussion about that, and that everybody's in a different place, with their practice. And so, I picked up my practice in my 40s. And so and in ISKCON. So like I said, I'm trying to harmonize all of this together. And so I was just wondering what your thoughts on that are about that, and how we can be more compassionate and not have people feel like this is, if you're not at this goal right now, then you can't become, have a guru or become a disciple in that way.
It is how Srila Prabhupada presented it. For him, the requirement for initiation was that you had demonstrated not only your willingness, but your ability to chant those 16 rounds and to observe those 4 strictures, which are presented themselves, as we know, at the end of the first canto of the Bhagavatam. They're like seen as pillars of pillars of moral life, much not to speak of spiritual life, because they're actually antidotes to the 4 pillars of the sinful life that characterizes Kali Yuga. So I frankly, and I've discussed this with him on a number of occasions, and I very much like the way Tripurari Maharaj presents them, that rather than us publicly vowing that I'm never going to ever do this again, and that he makes it really clear. Part of initiation means an agreement to avoid these things which act as obstructions to our spiritual progress. They're not permanent obstructions, because if bhakti is ahaituki, if it doesn't have any cause other than itself, then it also can't be stopped by anything. Although it can be impeded by our offenses or by our careless practice or neglect or whatever. So we slow down, we run into bumps. So I really, I've always appreciated the way he presents this. These are things that impede our spiritual progress, at least to some extent. And so we begin, and this is an initiation. You don't have to be a pure devotee to take initiation, right? Because this is the real start to our spiritual life. This is where, you're pushing the car down the hill, and the car is moving, but here's where you put it into gear and you let the clutch out, right? And get that jump start. And the engine gets going, and then your spiritual life is able to move on under its own power, in a sense. It's actually moving under the guru's power. That engine is the guru's instruction. So you get the engine started by initiation, I guess. So I really like the way he does that. And it is a problem for devotees who think that, oh my God, I've known so many devotees over the last 50 odd years who, can't make that commitment because of those 4 rules, or because of they're not sure, oh my God, if I don't chant 16 rounds every day, I'll commit some great offense if something happens and my life gets upended, and or somehow or other I find myself in bad association. I deviate a little bit, then everything will be ruined. But Narada Muni tells Vyasadeva in the 5th chapter of the Bhagavatam, 5th chapter of the first canto of the Bhagavatam, that even if we give up our practice because of, as Vishwanath says, because of poor determination, or Srila Prabhupada said, bad association, nothing's lost. Nothing's lost, because we're haunted, as Vishwanath Chakravarti talked about. Well, the verse says, Rasagarha, we become haunted by rasa, we become haunted by the taste that we've gotten from whatever service we've done to the Lord, as if by a ghost we can't shake, right? So bhakti is that powerful. It's the most powerful thing. There's a verse that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, I think, discusses in Madhurya Kadamba. I can't remember the Sanskrit off the top of my head. Bhakti-reva darshayati, bhakti-reva nayati. No, I can't remember the rest of the verse now. I can remember the first two padas. That bhakti, only bhakti has the power to show us Krishna. Bhakti-reva nayati, bhakti-reva darshayati, bhakti-reva nayati. Only bhakti has the power to draw us close to Krishna. And the third pada, only bhakti has the power to control Krishna. And the last pada says, therefore, bhakti is the most powerful thing of all. So, and Krishna assures us that if someone has this single desire to serve Krishna, that even if they do the most horrible thing, they're still to be considered saintly. They're still to be considered a sadhu. Why? Because he considers them sadhus. Because they're engaged in bhakti, because they're under the influence of Krishna's Swarupa Shakti, his internal potency, they're assured of success. Okay, so if I have a fever today, in the example that's given, if I have a fever today and I'm taking my medicine, I know that the fever will go down tomorrow and will be gone the next day. So Krishna says, by the power of that practice, they will surely very quickly become righteous. He says that in the next verse at the end of the 9th chapter of the Gita. So it does kind of seem like a disservice to the sadhakas and to the society in general to erect what seems like a forbidding wall, even, to the aspiring sadhaka, to make that commitment to do those things. And we know most of us have had days when we didn't finish 16 rounds, or we found ourselves doing something that's a little less than ideal, especially by Srila Prabhupada's standards. Maybe someone drank coffee, or depending on which devotees you talk to, eats chocolate, or maybe drinks green tea or something like that. And that's a big fall down. But the bhakti is, the commitment to the service of the guru is the actual active principle. And so I think a more generous, especially when it comes to the first initiation, when it becomes to blessing the devotees chanting of Harinam, I think great generosity is certainly appropriate, may be appropriate. And so within ISKCON, the institution has these strictures that, and especially nowadays, it's become very bureaucratic. This disciple has to take a course, the guru has to take a guru course, and then the guru has to be approved by a group of devotees who know that person, and then recommended to the GBC, and then the GBC, this governing body for the worldwide governing body for the society, has to give their imprimatur, and only then, and then the disciple has to promise, to chant 16 rounds. And I know one friend of ours, a young woman who we met when she was still a girl on the Big Island, who grew up as a young child at New Vrindavan, and she had a strong affinity for one of the prominent devotees from New Vrindavan, who's still quite a prominent guru in ISKCON. And since her childhood, she knew that she wanted to take initiation from this devotee. But he has this very strict standard. You've got to chant 16 rounds and follow the regulative principles. I think for American devotees, it's like 5 years or something like that. He has a really long waiting list. And I remember when I was still married, my wife and I, as part of our preparing ourselves for my accepting sannyas, moved to Alachua to get a good situation for my wife. And this young woman was living there then. And we were spending some time with her, talking with her one time. And I asked her, Bhakti, how come you haven't accepted initiation yet? I know that you've been carrying this torch for your guru in your heart since you were a little girl. so how is it that you're like 25 now and you still haven't accepted initiation? She just said, Japa, I haven't been able to consistently chant 16 rounds.
Yeah.
And then on his next visit to Alatra, he actually accepted her for initiation. And it was quite this wonderful moment when he handed her her beads and he said, and how many rounds of japa will you chant every day? And with tears in her eyes, she said, at least 16 rounds. And by the power of that commitment, she's been able to do that for the last several years. So I think, especially for the first initiation, some generosity is certainly appropriate. And I very much appreciate your bringing this up. This is, the idea. The guru's business is to encourage the student, not to discourage the student. And we saw that devotees fell away from their practice, and Prabhupada, he may have said something to them, or you should be more serious.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of any instances where he rejected somebody just because they lapsed into intoxication, or slept too often with their wife, or even with someone else's spouse or something like that. I don't know of any instances where he rejected them, or because they had difficulty with their japa. I even know of instances where devotees fell away for some time and they asked him to chant on their beads again. He said, no, it's not necessary. Once you've been initiated, whatever beads you chant on are sanctified. I remember a letter he wrote to one of my godbrothers in 1970. So yeah, I mean, it's all about grace. We make an effort to open our hearts to, it's not like we can actually attain grace. I sometimes talk about mercy or kindness, charity, grace, in the sense of qualification. What's the qualification for mercy?
Mm-hmm.
It's need, right? Nobody's going around doing a GoFundMe for Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos. Those guys have so much money that they're throwing it away on shooting themselves to the edge of space in rocket ships and stuff like that. But when there's an earthquake in Haiti and the infrastructure of the entire country is destroyed, all of a sudden there's people texting, $10 to the Red Cross or whoever, like crazy, to help the people in Haiti because of their need. So what it was 10, 12 years ago, it was the hurricane. And then more recently, on top of that, they're still trying to rebuild the country. And then there's this huge hurricane that completely devastates the country again. And again, everybody's on their phones texting, $10, $20, $150, or whatever it is, to whatever the number is that you see on your screen. So it seems to me the qualification for grace is need and acknowledgement of that need. Tasmat gurum prapadyeta. That tasmat has an antecedent, which is understanding the need for that grace. So that's a wonderful question, Krishna.
Yeah.
It's taken me much over my time, and
I'm sorry.
No, it's I can take it. I'm a big boy. I'm 74 years old. Who's going to touch me now? The temple president might give me a scowl and say, "Oh, you're not supporting me," or whatever. That'll be the extent of it. Such a wonderful question.
Well, thank you. That was very helpful. I appreciate your taking the time to answer that as fully as you did. I'm just going to keep remembering that bhakti is the most powerful thing, and know that Krishna's taking care of all of us, and in whatever ways that is, and just be encouraging and continue that association. So
thank you. Yeah, you boiled the whole thing down into
okay.
a couple of sentences. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there anything else quickly? Okay, then I guess we can adjourn for the day. This is the conclusion of our discussion of Guru Tattva. However, I'll be back next month, this time on Fridays, to discuss, we're just going to take a peek at the first 3 verses, the Mangalacharan of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which will be quite an adventure for me as well. So I thank you all so much for blessing me with your company, and especially to Padmanabha Maharaj for engaging me like this, and to Sakyarati and Shamananda for making it possible for me to do this without completely messing things up every week. And we'll see you this coming Friday. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Srimad Bhakti Abhay Ashram Maharaj ki.
Or Bhakti Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna.